This episode of The Adventure Jogger is brought to you by Dan Brosnack, Blaine Johnston, Jenny Early, and Shannon Howell, and all the rest of our amazing Patreon supporters, and of course, you, the listener. Thanks for listening. The Adventure Jogger, a podcast about trail and ultra running. Meet fascinating runners from the front, middle, and back of the pack, sharing inspiring and funny stories about life and running. Running should be fun, and so should running podcasts. I'm your host, Stephen Kornhaus, and this is The Adventure Jogger. Well, today's guest is probably known to just about anyone in the ultra world out there, and certainly the cycling community. He's an author, a runner, trail runner, ultra runner, biker, bike packer, apparently a TV show host at some point as well, and done pretty much anything in the sport out there. And I'm super excited to have Ryan Van Duzer on the podcast today. So welcome, Ryan, to the Adventure Jogger.
Thank you. I'm psyched to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about running because most of the podcasts I do are about biking.
Yeah, it seems I've followed you on YouTube for probably I honestly don't even know how long. It's been probably at least 6 years, I would think. And it seems like a lot of that in the more recent times has been biking
Mhm.
or bike packing, certainly. But yeah, we'll get into all of that. So I kind of want to start at the beginning of Ryan. I know, I've watched your Boulder videos where you talk about running that since you were like, was it like 6 years old when you first
Yeah.
started running
Yeah.
that? And you run every year, right?
I've missed a couple. I was a Peace Corps volunteer for 2 years living in Honduras. So I missed those two for sure.
Okay. And
But
so
I've done it
what
over
like
30 times now.
wow, that's awesome. That's a race that I would love to do. Just that atmosphere looks like such a fun time. Not a race you want to go do for like a PR, but just have fun.
Yeah. My favorite thing about the Boulder is the community aspect of it. I'm born and raised in Boulder, and that day is really when our city shines. There's 50,000 runners, but probably another 50,000 people along the course, music, fun. It's like a big city marathon.
Wow. Yeah, that looks I actually honestly I had never really heard of that race until I think it was about 3 years ago. I saw one of your videos
Mm.
on it, and then moving here to Colorado, I was in Boulder for something, and heard about this race, and I looked it up and saw how big it was, and I was just surprised, a 10K with, like you said, 50,000 people. I mean, that's just it's crazy.
We don't mess around in Boulder, man. If you're
No.
in Boulder, you're going to be a runner at some point.
Well, what got you into running? Was it just, family, or how did you find running at such a young age?
So none of my family ran. When I was a very young person at my well baby checkup, I was diagnosed with extremely high blood pressure, like
Oh,
crazy high,
wow.
160 over 140. Long story very short, I went through all sorts of tests in hospitals to try and figure out the cause of my high blood pressure. They never figured it out. And I remember one of my doctors looking at me very sternly and saying, the best way to strengthen your heart and to live a healthy life is to run. And so
Oh,
that was
wow.
kind of like my Forrest Gump moment where I was like, "Okay, I'll be running." And that moment on, I have been a runner. So running is truly my first love. I was like one of those weird kids in elementary school. I would wake up early and go running before school.
Oh, wow.
I was very committed to running for health, but also because back then I was pretty good at it and I liked winning races. It's not the case today, but I love the competition aspect of it.
Awesome. And so were you running like, cross country or track in elementary school, middle school, and all the way up through high school?
So our not until high school, like our schools didn't have any type of running. We had track in middle school, but not cross
Oh,
country. And I did summer programs like summer track and stuff like that. My events were the mile and the 800. And I've always loved the freedom of running and how simple it is to put on a pair of shoes and just run out the door and
yeah.
get a great workout in as little as, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't get that just about anywhere. I mean, even cycling to some extent, because I cycle a little bit, not near as much as you do, but it seems like aerobically for me, I have to bike at a much higher effort or
Yeah.
cadence in order to get the same kind of feel out of my workout.
Yeah, unless you're riding straight up a mountain, bikes are
Yes.
too efficient. They're too efficient, so you gotta ride many, many miles to get the same amount of workout as a run.
Yeah. I think I would rather run up a mountain than bike up a mountain. I've done both, and it just seems like it's so much easier running it than biking
That might be
it.
true, but I'll tell you going down a mountain is more fun on a bike.
Yeah, I'll give you that for sure. Well, what, did you run in college as well? Did you go to college? Did you run?
Yeah, I went to the University of Colorado. I was not nearly good enough to run at Colorado. I mean, those teams are some of the best in the nation, but I continued running. So I did track and cross country through high school, and in college, I still ran just for health, and I was still doing boulders and a handful of other races throughout the year. So I've always loved running. It's been a huge part of my life. If I go on vacation with my family or whatever, they know that there's gonna be some days where I just run out the door and leave for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Isn't that, like, the best way to see a new city, though? You get to explore on foot and see so many sights.
For sure. I mean, it absolutely is my favorite way to learn a new place, and I've traveled all over the world, and a lot of times without a bicycle, and so I'll leave my hotel or whatever, and even way before Strava or even Google, I would just run around and just figure things out, and, I wasn't following any set routes that other people had posted. I was just kinda on my own, so it was a fun moment of freedom and exploration.
Yeah, definitely before the Strava heat maps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what did the running work as far as for your blood pressure? Did you go back to the doctors and it worked?
Yeah, so for many years, I took medicine every day to control my blood pressure and maintain a healthy level, and then, yeah, once I was 25 years old, my body kind of stabilized and I didn't need to take the medicine anymore. So I attribute my health definitely to running for sure. And not
Wow.
just my physical health, but my mental health. And I feel
Yes.
more connected to myself and to nature. If I'm having a tough day or if I've been sitting in front of the computer too long, I'll run out the door and instantly feel better.
Yes, 100% agree with that. It's like something about just getting outside, especially for me, like, you're probably the same way, but in nature, like, not necessarily running through, like, a downtown, but it's still nice getting outside running through a downtown, but when you get in the mountains and connect with nature that way is just there's nothing like it.
Yeah, it really is the best. And like, again, it's so simple. Like, I love
Yeah.
bike packing. I love my bike adventures, but there's a lot that's involved. All the
Yes, a
gear, all the
lot more.
camping gear, the bikes, things can break. Like, there's just running is about as easy as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, and so were you, when you were younger, primarily a road runner per se, or were you on the
Yeah.
trails even at a young age?
I ran trails at a young age. I live in Boulder, so I've always been close to the foothills. But all the racing I did was road races. I never did
Okay.
any trail races till much later in life.
What was your first trail race?
Man, I'm trying to think. I don't even know. It might have been the Burning Man ultra marathon.
Really?
You want to call that
Wow.
a trail?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, like, hard packed dirt, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I
Well,
can't remember
speaking
any
of
other trail races. I didn't do any trail marathons. Yeah, and that wasn't that long ago. That was, in 2013, so just over
I
10
s
years ago.
I was gonna say, because 'cause you've been doing Burning Man now for, what is it, like, 9, 10 years?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you about that at some point, but I guess we'll go ahead and get into that, is how did you find Burning Man? Like, how did you hear about this event and, like, what drew you to it?
So I have a lot of goofy, weirdo friends in Boulder. We have a little bit of everybody here. And they had been telling me about Burning Man for years, and I always just kind of blew it off. No, I don't want to go hang out with you dirty hippies in the desert. I didn't really know what it was about. And then finally, I just said yes. And I was like, okay, I'll give this a shot. I like trying new things in life. And I went to Burning Man and I absolutely fell in love. I love the culture. I think it brings out the best in humanity. I love the art and the sculptures. A lot of people spend an entire year building something beautiful for people to enjoy during the week of Burning Man. And I love the free spiritedness of it all. And before I went to that first Burning Man, I Googled to see if there were any running groups because I was like, oh, it's 7 days long. I want to run while I'm out there. I don't
Yeah.
just hang the whole time. I got to get my exercise. And when I Googled that, I found this camp called Pink Lightning that puts on the ultra marathon. And at that point, I had never run further than a marathon.
Okay.
I was like, oh, it's a 50K. I can run, 5 more miles than a marathon, and I'm going to give this a shot. So it really was that race that got me into the ultra scene. And then
Oh,
once I was
wow.
there, I met lots of other people who have done ultras, and they start telling me stories and, oh, you got to try a 50 miler. And then it just escalated from there.
That's awesome. And now I've seen probably 3 of your different Burning Man, ultra videos, and it looks like a really neat course per se where you go along the trash fence, but then you get to go into the playa now and, like, see some of the camps, and you're interacting with all the different people. It looks like such, like you said, a free-spirited atmosphere. There's, like, so much presentness, like, everyone is just there. It looks awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the art is incredible. The race starts at 5 in the morning, so it's totally dark. So you see the lights of the city, and that's exciting. And then you get to see the phases of the day as the sun rises. The Black Rock Desert, where Burning Man takes place outside of Reno, Nevada, is stunning. So even if there was no art going on or no Burning Man, it would still be a
Right.
beautiful place to run.
And so, is it a true 50K? Like, is it 31.2 miles? Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah, they take it seriously. It's a true 50K. They have aid stations. We have bibs, we have shirts, we have chip timing. Like, it's the
oh,
real
wow.
deal.
And I love how they have the one group of people you always run past in your videos that seem to have like, the buffers, like, the car
Yeah,
buffers. They're out
yeah.
there, like, getting your quads. That's so
So
cool.
one of the premises of Burning Man is that everybody brings some sort of gift to the community to share with the community, and that can be whatever they dream up. So this group of people every year come out with like, leaf blowers and buffers and like very heavy duty massage tools, and they set up like a NASCAR type situation where you go into the pit stop and they get you all buffed up, and then you continue on. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, now, so you said this was your first trail race, and so
Yeah,
I pulled up your ultra sign up, and so that would have been August of 2013.
yeah,
And it's a 50K, and you
yeah.
ran a 4:10, 4 hours and 10 minutes. You got 2nd overall in your first trail race. That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. People think, that that race is just to goof around. But, when I'm on a start line of any race, I want to go as fast as I can. Like, that's just
Yeah.
built inside of me. Sometimes I can goof around. The last couple of years of Burning Man Ultra, I haven't been taking it nearly as seriously. But yeah, I like going fast as I can go.
Yeah, it looks like the next year you even did a 3:52. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a 7:30 pace or something like that for 30 miles.
And
That's
I'm jumping on trampolines and goofing around. You
and
know?
swinging and doing all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I just can't even fathom that. Well, even since it starts at 5 in the morning and it is in this desert, I mean, what does the temperatures get up to in the day when you're running?
Well, so if you start at 5 and you run in 4 hours, you're done by 9. So by
Oh, that's
9,
true.
it's still really not that hot. It's later in the day where the heat really comes, and there's plenty of people that are out there for, 6, 7, 8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. But the
Yeah, and I'm
heat at
assuming
Burning Man doesn't really come till midday.
okay, and I'm assuming it's a pretty darn near perfectly flat course, right?
It couldn't be flatter.
Aside from running up on top of a trampoline or
Yeah,
a phone
exactly.
booth or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's I like how flat it is. It makes it a very runnable course, of course. But,
Yeah,
it's like it's hard on the body because it's so much running, so much pounding. I'm used to now doing ultras like Leadville or something where you get to hike
right.
for a lot of it and, like, give your other muscles, a break and to engage different parts of your body.
Yeah, definitely. Well, since we're talking Burning Man, I learned of another competition at Burning Man, and I was curious, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but if you've ever participated in an event called the Odyssey.
I have not. That is I like running ultras. That sounds absolutely insane. And I don't know if you're
Yes.
explaining to your audience what this is, but I can if you want.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So the Odyssey, and you have like 24 hours to finish it. You have numbers 8, 12, 16, 24.
Yes.
And you have to choose 4 different activities, and you give each one of those activities, like, so let's say one of the activities is running, one of them is beers, one of them is donuts, and one of them is orgasms. So you have to choose 8, 12, 16, or 24. I'm guessing most people aren't picking to do 24 orgasms in 24, at least not guys.
Yeah, right.
So then you have to decide, okay, maybe I'll run the 24 miles, drink 18 beers, eat 12 donuts, and then have 6 orgasms, which is still a lot in 24 hours.
Right.
And there are quite a few people that actually try this feat. It's interesting.
Yeah, I heard, I think last year, I don't know about this year, but I heard last year, I think there was only maybe 2 finishers in the
Yeah,
Odyssey last year, which is just it's I mean, well, I mean, if you're gonna do the 24 miles, you have all those donuts you can fuel with, and
yeah,
you got the beers, which are carbs, so, I mean,
yeah,
you're halfway there to running a
yeah.
marathon. It's just the
It's
hard one
just
is the orgasms probably.
the orgasm, and that's it's just honor system. There's nobody there like verifying the orgasms or anything for that matter.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if that's what I'm ever going to be able to pull off. Maybe, never say never.
Right,
I never thought
exactly,
I'd finish Leadville 100, and I did that. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, speaking of Leadville, I know when, we met in person last year at a Hoka event, and I asked you about Leadville because I was just getting ready to run the Leadville 100 for my first time,
right.
and I asked you about that, and you told me I was gonna have so much fun, it was gonna be great, I was gonna crush it, and I was stoked, but you didn't tell me that I was gonna puke, and,
Sorry.
but, but I did finish, and, your videos were a big inspiration watching those, leading up to it, just seeing the course and the atmosphere, and it's just such an awesome event.
I love Leadville. I really do, and I'm gonna do it more times throughout my life. I've done it twice now. And like the Burning Man culture, like we all the us ultra runners know, it really is the community that makes those races special.
Yes.
It's just intoxicating to be around that type of positive energy. And the crew is psyched, the runners are psyched, the people cheering you on. It is, and nature's, I tell people like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's very hard, but you get to be outside for, 20 plus hours enjoying nature. It's not every day we get to do that. So for me, I look
right.
at these 100 milers as a gift, as like a special holiday where I get to just be outside all day and play and playing with friends who are out there.
Yeah. It's rare that you have a day that you can just dedicate solely to, running or being out in nature. You don't have to worry about work. You don't have to worry about family or whatever's going on at that point. It's just your whole purpose for that 20, plus hours is one foot in front of the other and
Yeah.
carry on. And that's what I love so much about long ultras specifically is just that freedom of the trail.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So now you've done Leadville twice, and
Yeah.
looks like both times you got the big buckle, under
Yeah.
25 hours.
Yeah. The first year I had a very hard time, my final 25 miles, and it was pretty much just a depth march,
Yeah.
walking it in with my very kind pacer who was so patient. And the next year I finished much stronger, which made me happy. But I still don't think I've had my best race at Leadville.
Really?
No.
Now I'm curious, what is your best 100-mile time? Because, I mean, you had I think it was like a 20-hour
Yeah,
time at
javelina.
Leadville.
I
Oh,
did 20
javelina?
hours flat at javelina.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's my best, but obviously javelina is a way different course than Leadville.
A lot hotter too, though.
It's a lot hotter, it's a way more runnable, so, it's different wear and tear on your body.
Yeah. Now, is that one I don't know much about the course other than it being in the desert, it's hot, and it is a lot of single track, but is there a lot of elevation gain at javelina, or is
There's
it
not a lot, no, there
no?
are some gradual hills on the course, but it's not you never, like, truly need to hike, not like
Okay.
Hope Pass where you're, like, struggling up a very steep mountain.
Yeah, bent over, hands on the knees, power hiking.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Well, at what point did you get into, I guess, bike packing or biking, cycling? I know we want to talk mostly about running, but bike
yeah.
packing's been a lot of your life.
For
I
sure.
mean, you
So I've
biked.
always loved human powered transport. So running was my first love, and I've always liked riding my bike. And I rode my bike everywhere I went as a kid. I rode my bike to school. I was very environmentally minded. I thought, you know what, I'm going to ride a bike for the rest of my life. I don't want to have a car because when I was young, I equated cars with pollution, which is still true to this day. And I was like, I'm going to do my part and make the planet cleaner and ride my bike everywhere I go. So I have always been a bike commuter. I didn't race bikes growing up, but I loved pushing it hard and going up and down mountains and going mountain biking. I would say I didn't get into bike packing specifically until my very first big bike adventure. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras for 2 years. When I finished my service, I traded in my plane ticket that I would have flown home on, like all the other volunteers.
Right.
I used that money to buy a bike and other supplies, and I rode my bike from Honduras back home to Boulder, Colorado.
Wow. Now how many miles was that?
That was about 4,000 miles.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's pretty far. It took me 3 months, and I always tell people, like, I'd never felt so alive in my life. Every day was a new adventure. Every day was completely new. I met wonderful people the whole way, people who invited me into their homes and fed me meals. I saw beautiful sunrises and sunsets and rainbows, and it was just absolutely incredible. And so that's when I really fell in love with the idea of traveling by bike, because you get to go
Yeah.
slow, right? When you're in a car or when you're in an airplane or a bus, you're just zipping by places and you don't really get to experience them. When you're on a bike, you're going, 13 to 15 miles an hour. You're carrying all your own gear. You can stop whenever you want. When
Right.
you meet people, you're not an intimidating presence. They're like, wow, this is an interesting character. How'd you find our tiny village in the middle of nowhere? And I've made so many friends through these adventures, and I love it. I absolutely love it. People always say that like van life is like living the most simple way you can live, but really it's bike life. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could see that being out on the road and yeah, 13 to 15 miles an hour versus still in a van, you're driving places, you're going past a lot of towns and
Yeah.
yeah,
Not
absolutely.
that it's a competition, but like it's a very simplistic way to live for a
Yeah.
while, however long your adventure is. I bring two shirts and one pair of shorts and one pair of socks and camping gear. So it's like I have just the absolute bare necessities.
One pair of socks
Yeah. I
for
jump in
4,000
water all the
miles.
time. So I'm constantly trying to clean up. I don't love being gross. I know it sounds gross that I only bring one pair of socks, but I'm constantly like finding water.
Right. Wow. Now, so you wrote a book about this whole experience, The Long Way Home.
Yes. Yep. So I wrote a book about the experience and how it led to this unconventional life that I'm living today, being an adventure storyteller. When I did that adventure back in 2005, I wrote articles for my local newspaper here in Boulder, and I filmed it and made a short documentary that played on the Travel Channel. And
Oh,
from that
wow.
moment on, I was like, I want to be some sort of a storyteller that tells stories to hopefully inspire people to go out and challenge themselves and to do crazy things.
And so is that what led into, I guess, your TV hosting
Yeah,
time in your life?
exactly. So my video played on the Travel Channel, and I was like, wow, I want to keep doing this. I guess I have to like become a TV host or something. So for the next 10 years of my life, I dedicated a lot of time to auditions and casting calls. I had a local public access TV show here in Boulder, like an adventure show that kind of gave me all of the experience that I was going to need. You've heard the term fake it till you make it. That's
Right.
essentially what I was doing, just like, hey, I'm a TV host, watch me. This is also when online video became a thing, like in 2005, 2006 with YouTube. Because
Right.
before this, if you wanted to like make documentaries, the only way to get them seen was at film festivals, or maybe you'd be lucky and sell it to like PBS or something.
Right.
So
Wow.
I
And
love the
so
freedom of YouTube. I love being able to tell stories and post them on YouTube, and then the whole world has access to it.
now is that when you first, I guess, became a content creator on YouTube was in like 2005, 2006 timeframe?
Kind of, I put videos on YouTube. If you scroll way back on my channel, you'll see videos from those days, really bad videos. But at the time, I don't even think subscribers were a thing. You couldn't make
Oh, wow.
money off YouTube. It was just a place to put videos, kinda like Instagram is, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm gonna put videos up there, and what I really did with those videos was send those links to casting directors so they could see what I looked like on camera.
Oh,
So at
interesting.
that point in time, I had no idea that I would become a YouTuber. I still wanted to very much be like a TV host and work in the TV world.
Okay. Well, when did that mindset change for you? Like, when did you realize that you didn't really wanna do the TV thing and maybe wanted to go towards YouTube?
Yeah, so I had my heart broken so many times in the TV world. The entertainment industry is very fickle and very hard to navigate.
Right.
And, I would pitch show ideas. I'd go into casting calls. I'd fly to New York or whatever. I'd get my hopes up. They would tell me that, yeah, this is going to be the next big thing. We would shoot maybe a pilot, and I would think, all right, this is it. It's going to happen. And then everything would come crashing down.
Oh, man.
So reasons out of my control over and over and over. And I had some success. I was on the Travel Channel. I was on Discovery Channel, but I could never trust the process. I could do a really good job, but then I would just have to hand it over to other people. So in 2016, I decided I had just shot another pilot for Travel Channel. I thought it was going to be my big break. It turned out not to be. And I was like, I can't deal with this stress anymore. I am going to
Oh,
try to become a YouTuber and build up a channel big enough to the point where I can make a living. And this is right when like Casey Neistat was like really
right.
doing a lot of vlogging, and he kind of like paved the path for
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
And I was like, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And slowly, 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 emphasize slowly, built up a channel to the point where it is today. And it's not like I have a gigantic channel, but it's big enough and I'm able to reach a lot of people. And I still get to create content that's important to me and that I truly feel brings value to the world. So that's really
Yeah.
the mission.
And you have that creative control over the whole process where you're not worried about somebody else, giving the final say and then or crushing your dreams at the end of, all this hard work.
Totally. And even when I was
Yeah.
on the Travel Channel or creating, higher production stuff for other networks, it was exciting. I was on national TV, but a lot of times they would cut out anything that was kind of edgy, or if I was
Huh.
being too energetic, they wanted to control me, just wanted me to be just some dude that could memorize lines and spit them out. So what I love about YouTube really is the freedom. I can tell the stories in the way that I want to tell them, and I can
Right.
talk about topics that I would never be able to talk about on TV. So maybe we're talking about the environment or climate change or political things. And those are all things that I can talk about on my channel.
Right. Yeah, but on a national platform like, a TV network, yeah, you're never gonna have that freedom ever.
No, because
No,
advertisers aren't going to stand for it. And if you lose
exactly.
advertisers, you lose money, your show gets canceled. When I talk about those things on my channel now, there are consequences.
Oh,
There are
sure.
people who don't like hearing about politics. I've been told over and
Right.
over to stay in my lane and just focus on running and biking. But at
Yep.
the end of the day, I don't wanna look back and say, "You know what, Ryan? I really wish I had spoken up about this topic, but I didn't because I was scared of losing followers."
Yeah. And I
So,
think that's like super important that you still have that mindset because you are in the running and biking space, you're a pretty big creator. You have a
yeah,
lot of subscribers. And and I'm a much smaller creator and I've already experienced that negative feedback from people on certain things where they think, oh, well, it's just stick to running. Don't worry about this stuff. And it's like, whatever. But that you're still growing your channel, still creating the content you want amongst the negative feedback, that says a lot about your character, which is good, and that's,
yeah.
it's definitely somebody to look up to.
Thanks, man, yeah, and I feel like the online world can be such a negative, hateful, toxic place.
Yes.
And so I'm used to getting negative, hateful, toxic comments, but the overwhelming majority of the comments I get are from very friendly, awesome people who are just
Right.
saying thanks, or they're telling me about how my videos have inspired them in some way, shape, or form. And when that happens, when I get those emails or messages, I call that my emotional paycheck. That's really the reason why I do this stuff is to impact.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm curious, like, obviously, when you were building this channel, you're getting it, you're getting the subscribers, you're starting to see, people following your journey, your creation, the videos you're putting out there. When you got that first negative feedback, how did that affect you as a young, small creator at that
Yeah.
point?
It's still hard for me to this day. I can brush off most of it, but it's not fun when somebody rags on you. It's like, "Oh, this is stupid. Why you have to be mean? Why there's so many meanies in the world?" But like I say, again, I focus on the positive comments and the people who are giving me constructive feedback. And when people send me those mean messages, I have to remember that it says a lot more about them and their situation, what they're going through, than it does about me.
Right.
They're just
Yeah.
projecting their stuff on me.
Yeah, that's right, and, we don't know what everybody's going through. They could be going through a horrible time in their life or something, we don't know, so it's yeah, but it's difficult when you see a couple of them come in and on some content you worked really hard on and negative feedback, and it's I think I've gotten better the longer I've done it, which I've not been done YouTube as long as you. I think I've only been doing it for a little over 4 years, and it's gotten easier, those negative
Yeah.
comments where you just kinda just, "Ah, whatever. Who cares?" Just brush it off and
Totally.
don't even really
And the
acknowledge
best
it.
way to deal with them is either to ignore them or try to engage them in a positive way. I never fight back, you know.
No.
Fighting fire with fire is not the way to go with online comments.
No.
No, but there are moments that I've had, like, very good exchanges with people where they came at me pretty hard, and I responded to, like, in a, a very reasonable way, and then they come back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't quite realize that,
Oh, wow.
that it would affect you in that way," and then we can go back and forth, and it becomes, like, a great moment for everybody.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's good. That's a good moment for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what, with YouTube, I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's opened lots of doors for you, working with different brands. I've seen you've done a lot of, car commercials, I believe, like Subaru. Was that
Yeah.
after YouTube or was that before YouTube?
It was kinda before YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's ironic that I did car commercials for a guy who's never had a car.
Right.
Some would
Yeah, I
say I'm
know.
a sellout, but, I was, need a paycheck.
Right. Yeah. Well, I did see on your website it said you've never owned a car. Is that still true? Do you still not own a
That's
car?
that's still true. I didn't get my license until I was 32 years old, and I
Wow.
only got my license so that I could do a production with Men's Journal where I needed to be driving, and so I
Okay.
learned just enough to drive these Land Rovers, for, up and down these dirt roads in Montana where I had to, like, drive the car and talk to the camera guy and
Right.
spit out these lines, but then after that, they would, like, throw in the real driver and get, like, the action shot. Nobody trusted me in the car, which is good. I
Bring
don't
the
myself either.
Yeah, bring the stunt driver in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with all the traveling that you do, I mean, because you have run in countless countries, you have bike packed in
Okay.
tons of countries. When you go from Boulder to the airport, that's a long way. So I'm assuming you probably hire an Uber or like, ride your bike. I don't know. How do you get it to do that part?
One of these days, I do want to ride my bike to the airport. It's gonna have
Really?
to be a special occasion where I have enough time to, like,
Right.
get there. I mean, it would take like 3-ish hours, and it would be, to a place where I don't have to have a lot of, baggage, but I always take the bus.
Okay.
So we have great transportation here in Boulder. So I ride my bike to the downtown bus station in Boulder, and then I get on the bus. So
Ah,
I'm a big bus guy to go into the airport.
okay. All right. And then when you land in some foreign country, it's kind of the same thing. Figure out their local transportation
Yeah,
system and take
local
advantage of it.
transportation, or I try to rent a bike wherever I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so of your bike packing adventures, like I mean, I know you've bike packed from Honduras to Boulder. You bike packed, was it Romania? I believe you did as well.
Not Romania. I've done,
No,
I rode the length of Sweden last summer from above
Sweden.
the Arctic
Okay,
Circle down to the bottom of, Sweden. I've ridden across Cuba. I've ridden all over Mexico, all over the United States, Canada, little
when
other.
did you ride across Cuba? What year was that?
That was like 2016.
What was that like as far as
It was
the
cool.
culture
I've
and
actually been to Cuba twice on a bike. I had never been to Cuba. I'd spent a lot of time in Latin America, and I was very curious about Cuba. Of course, living in the United States, we get fed a certain narrative from our media,
sure.
and I wanted to check it out for myself, but it is the most safe place to ride a bicycle.
Oh
There is
wow.
barely any crime in that country, mainly because of communism, and if you do anything wrong, you get in big, big trouble, so the
Yeah, that's true.
penalties are stiff, so people are just very, obedient, and
Okay.
there aren't many cars on the roads. There aren't many
Huh.
vehicles, and if there are cars, they're so used to seeing like horse-drawn buggies and other carts on the side of the road that they drive pretty slowly. So
Interesting.
Cuba is a great place to ride a bike.
I never would have imagined that. Like you
Yeah.
said, our what we're fed here through the media is like the opposite. It's so dangerous. You can't go there.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's
wow.
super chill. I love it.
Well, what's your favorite country that you've bike packed through or biked through?
Oh, it's hard to say. I love Mexico. I really love it. I love the culture and the food and the people and the music and the vibe. And I've biked all over Mexico,
Yeah.
north to south, everywhere. So Mexico is probably my favorite place. I love beans. If you watch my channel,
Okay.
you can
Yep.
learn very quickly that I love eating beans. So of course
Yep.
Mexico is going to be high on that list.
That's right, because you've been a vegetarian now for how long? For
20
quite a long
years.
time.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
So now I mean, is it vegetarian because you eat, dairy still, I assume?
I eat some dairy. Yeah. I'm kind
Okay.
of weaning myself off. I'm not full vegan by any means, but
Okay.
I definitely eat a vegetarian diet.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think that's huge for endurance, for running. I know, like, I switched over to a plant-based diet been about 4 years ago, but now we're more like pescatarian. We do have some fish occasionally,
Cool.
but no dairy. But I just remember the first time we switched, like within the first couple of months, I ran an ultra marathon, and just that feeling of recovering after the race was
Yeah.
so much quicker. Like it
Yeah.
was just amazing the effect it had on my body.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only our bodies, but one of the big reasons
Yeah,
why I'm a vegetarian is compassion for the animals and
right,
the living conditions of the factory farms. And it's just
right.
not a pretty process, let's just say.
No. Definitely not. Yeah, I've seen plenty of those, chicken farm videos where they show where it's a
Yeah.
free range chicken, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's appalling.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about running? Because I know you have run in Mexico. It looks like you go there almost every year for the Ultra Caballa Blanco race, just
Yeah.
about. But now what other countries have you run in or run races in?
I've run races in Honduras. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I ran a couple half marathons. I actually ran the Havana Marathon in Cuba
Oh,
when I
cool.
finished my bike trip there, and that's a funny story. That's my only DNF ever,
Really?
and that is because it was just organized in kind of a loosey-goosey fashion, but they had a 10K and a marathon going off at the same time. And so we're running, 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 running. And I guess I didn't pay attention, but the marathoners were supposed to go straight, but I saw most of the crowd took a left. So I just kind of kept following the crowd.
Okay.
Little did I know that was the 10K turnoff.
Oh,
So I
no.
run all the way back to the start line where the 10K was finishing. But at the time, I just thought maybe, oh, we're just doing loops or something. And so I run through the start finish line and I start asking volunteers, like, hey, I'm running the marathon. Where do I go? And they're like, just keep going, keep going. And I wasn't the only one. There were other people around me
Oh,
kind of
wow.
confused. And after we ran through the start finish line, most people stopped. So the crowd, dissipated. And it was just me and a few other people trying to figure this out. Long story short, I did not finish that race because by that point we were so far behind. All the aid stations were packing up, and it would have just
Oh, wow.
would have been tough to finish it.
And that's the only DNF
That's
over
the only
the
DNF. Yeah,
numerous 20 years or whatever, it's 1
yeah,
DNF.
yep,
Wow.
yep, yep. Knock on some wood here, so that
Right, I
is my
know.
only DNF.
Well, what is your favorite country that you've run it in? Is it Cuba or
Cuba's
Mexico?
a interesting place to run. Yeah, I loved Cuba. I mean, I love warm weather. I love hot ultra marathons. That's why I love
Okay.
Javelina and Caballo Blanco and Burning Man Ultra, all that kind of stuff. So I like being warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so the Caballa Blanco race, I mean, obviously every runner has read the Born to Run book and has learned, about that story there. But I'm curious at the aid stations there, I mean, do they have, what was it called? Pasole? Is that like
Pinole.
their, yeah,
So the pinole is like the raramuri. We know them as tarumara superfood.
right.
It's like ground up cornmeal. And they do have that at every single aid station. And so they
Wow.
will pour it into a little like Dixie cup for you and you just kind of drink it. And it's hard to put down because it's like kind of like drinking sandpaper almost in a way. Just think of
Oh,
like
wow.
unsweetened, ground up like cream of wheat or something.
So is it dry or is it moist
It's
like a cream of
wet.
wheat?
It's in a cup with like
Okay.
water.
Okay.
So I do like drinking the Pinole there just because that's like part of the experience, of course. But now
Right.
the race has gotten so big that they have other treats as well, the aid stations, bananas and other things. So it's not just Pinole, but I love that race. That race has a special place in my heart for sure.
Yeah, it looks like you've gone there at least 4
Yeah,
times is what
I've been
Ultra
there
Signup shows, I
5
think.
times. The first time I went there, actually, there was a lot of narco violence going on in
Oh,
the
wow.
area, and they actually canceled the race at the last minute
Oh,
because
no.
they were worried for our safety. So it was actually kind of a big deal, and there were, like, articles in the New York Times about it. I have videos about it on my YouTube channel, but yeah, there was
Wow.
violence going on in the canyons that had nothing to do with the race, but the race organizers didn't want to like set us free on these trails, knowing that,
Right.
we could get caught in the crossfire or whatever.
Yeah, now where does the race run through those canyons where this violence was occurring?
Exactly. So it was going
Okay.
right through places where this was happening.
Oh,
And
man.
at the time, Caballo Blanco's girlfriend, Maria was one of the race directors, and she just told us all, she's like, I cannot in good conscience start this race and let you out there. Like there's
Yeah,
danger out there. And, you know, the whole point of that race was to like build harmony and exchange between the locals and the foreigners who are coming
right.
around the world.
Wow. So how you said it's gotten big, like, how big has that race gotten?
So now back for most of the time, it was just that 50 miler. Now they have a marathon and they have like a half marathon. They have a 10K. They
Oh,
have
wow.
all these kids races. So it's an entire weekend of fun and excitement and races. And so the morning of the 50 miler, I think there's almost 1,000 people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty
And I
big.
would say most of them, well, not, I wouldn't say most of them are definitely locals.
Really?
Which is
Most of them,
cool.
wow.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah,
always
that is
set up
cool.
that Caballo everybody who ran that race who was Raramuri, Tarumara, they would get corn vouchers for certain checkpoints they would get to because he
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
be able to, like, give something back to these people for doing such a
Yeah.
huge physical feat. So that's still alive today. So a lot of the
Oh,
locals,
cool.
women, or people who you would not expect to be able to run 50 miles lace up their sandals and go out there because they know that, they're gonna come home with some vouchers for food.
So they can provide for their family, basically. That's
Yep,
wow, that's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah, it's
Huh.
cool.
Now, are there still people that go out there and run barefoot at all, or is it mainly sandals?
It's sandals. I've never seen
Sandals.
anybody run that race barefoot. I mean, the
Okay,
kid races maybe but those are short races, but I've never seen an adult run that race barefoot.
but it's sandals. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the
Huh.
sandals are made up of just like leather, and then the sole is always like a piece of a car tire. So the soles are very tough. And
Wow.
yeah, so and then they string them together with leather. If you look at photos online, you'll see them. They look kinda like Jesus sandal.
Man, that sounds awesome with the car tire. That's I can imagine well, I mean, their feet have gotta be probably so used to that, that I could
Yeah,
imagine if, like if I was to go put a pair of those on, gosh, I'd
yeah,
probably be, like, blistered all the it'd be
yeah.
crazy.
It takes I mean, they live a lifetime wearing those sandals. Those are the sandals they wear for everyday life. It's not just like running.
Right.
They wear them for
Yeah.
everything.
Wow. Well, then I also wanted to ask you about, it looks like, over the last couple of years, you have either designed your own bike or, bikes with companies or partnered with a company to design a bike,
Yep.
or several. Like, how many bikes have you designed now?
Well, we're working on a couple more right now, but I work closely with Priority Bicycles in New York City. They're amazing people. They're like my brothers, really. And so in
Yeah.
2020, during the pandemic, when everything got canceled, I pitched the idea that we invent or create some sort of an adventure bike packing bike. And so I designed that bike with the designers at Priority, and we created a prototype. And I rode that prototype on what's called the Great Divide mountain bike route that goes
Right.
from Canada to Mexico. It's 2,700 miles. So I tested that bike out on that trail. We've been selling that bike. Now we have an updated version of that bike. And we're trying to, not trying, we are in the process of developing an adventure bike that's more budget friendly. because a big part of what I do is I want other people to be able to do these things.
Right.
And I understand that it's very expensive and there's high barriers to entry. And so we're trying to make a bike that's still pretty darn solid, but quite a bit cheaper than the ones that I originally designed.
Yeah, because it seems like that's probably the biggest barrier to entry for cycling, at least from, for me as a runner that would occasionally cycle, mainly because I was injured and couldn't run,
Yeah.
before I found the benefits of cross training. It did seem that to go out and buy a bike that was, not like a Walmart bike, but
Yeah.
go out and buy a bike that was decent was still gonna cost you probably at least 1,500 bucks
Yeah.
at a minimum, and
Yeah.
then you could go all the way up to 12,000, 15,000, however much you wanna spend, basically. So having a quality bike
Mhm.
at a lower entry point, I mean, it's just gonna get so many more people into the sport.
And that's really the goal because it's not just the bike, it's all the camping gear,
Right,
all the clothing that you need, the specialized stuff for cold weather or whatever. And then, usually you're traveling somewhere with your bike. A lot of these bike packing trips aren't out your front door. So there's
right.
a lot of cost involved with it.
Yeah, and so it looks like I looked at one of the bikes I think you had designed, and it has like a belt
Yeah.
drive instead of a
Mhm.
chain.
Yep.
What's the like, for somebody that's not into cycling, hugely, what's the benefit of a belt drive versus a chain?
So it's called the Gates Carbon Belt Drive. And what's the benefit is that they never need to be lubed and they last three
Oh.
times longer than a chain. And you pair that with some sort of an internal gearing system where all the gears are protected inside either a hub or the
Oh,
bottom
okay.
bracket area. And so the whole idea is just low maintenance. So that if you get one of these bikes and you take them on adventures, the adventure is already hard enough. We don't want you to
Right.
your bike breaking, your chain, your derailleur, all that kind of stuff. So the whole idea is low maintenance.
Okay. So reduces components too because like you said, you don't have a derailleur, which is
Yeah,
probably the first thing to break on a bike on a mountain trail, I would
yeah,
assume. Okay, that's cool. All right.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. Well, I mean, what's next for you? Do you have plans to go bike pack across Europe or something, or like
I'm
what's on the
always
horizon?
dreaming of something new. I don't know exactly what I'm going to get into at the end of this year, but I want to just keep on bike packing and traveling by bike for the rest of my life. I love it on a personal level. It has become my job as well. But I just
Yeah.
love moving through the world in a slow fashion that allows me to connect with people and nature and myself. I love
Right.
sleeping under the stars. Whenever I come back from one of these trips, I just feel better about myself. I feel more grounded. Like it just helps
Yeah.
me in my day to day life.
Definitely. It's huge for the mind, the mental health. Just getting that out there is it's so important. Like I have found it to be more true since I've been injured for the last 9 months basically and haven't been able to run really for 6 months. So I've found that to be very true and I miss that. But even just like I know before I had my surgery, my wife and I drove up to like 9,000 feet somewhere in the mountains and just got out and like sat on a rock. And
Yeah.
that was just amazing. Just being out, even though I couldn't hike, I couldn't really do much. I just went out there and sat and it was just amazing to be present in nature and hear you don't hear the city. You just hear the wind and the birds, and it's I love it, love it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
nothing better, really. I mean, nature is medicine.
it is. It is that is so true. And so I see you have we talked about it. You have Javelina coming up in
Mhm.
about a month, maybe a little more than a month.
Yeah.
What do you have any other races planned for this year or for next year?
No, that's probably be good for the rest of this year. I like jumping into small local 5Ks here, so you never know. I'll do some stuff in Boulder. I always do the Boulder. I would love to go back and do Caballo Blanco next year.
Yeah,
I'd love to do Leadville again another time, but yeah, next year I think my goal is to try something new. I do a
new,
lot of these races over and over and over, and I like
right.
that because I really feel a great connection to it. But I also would love to try something new.
Now, try something new. Do you mean like a new race, or do you mean
Yeah,
like something new other than running and biking?
yeah. I want to do the Leadville 100 on a pogo stick. No, I
That would
mean,
be
yeah, like
awesome.
do it a whole new race.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Now, do you have any desires at all to go over and do any like European races? That whole scene?
Yeah, maybe. I'm open to anything. I love going to Europe to ride my bike, so why not run? I've done
Yeah.
my very first marathon was actually in Copenhagen, Denmark. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I like the European style of racing.
Okay. Well, I also I did want to ask you about an event you've done a couple of times and have made videos about that really piqued my interest, and it's something I really want to do. But it's Ragbri. Like
Yeah.
that also looks like such an amazing just community event where you're going through these small towns on a bike and just it's a party. Like it looks
Yep.
like so much fun.
Again, there's a theme with all the things that I like doing, Burning Man or Javelina, where they're just events, they're parties, they're fun. And Ragbri is definitely in that class of events. There's 20,000 people who ride bikes across the state of Iowa. It's been going on for 51 years now. The
Oh wow.
entire the entire state embraces it. It shows off the best of small town America. You're riding through these beautiful little villages and towns, and all the kids come out and sell brownies, and the old ladies have spaghetti dinners at the church basement, and it's just very charming. And so I've been
Yeah.
doing that for about 7 years. And again, it's accessible to everybody. You don't have to be an elite athlete. You don't have a special body size or type to be out there, or bike even. It's really
Right.
an event for everybody.
Yeah, there's some other YouTubers, that I follow, Carrot and Nate, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
them, but they've done it, and they did it on, like, I think it was a tandem bicycle with,
Yeah.
like, 3 people, and that that just seems crazy. It just looks like such a fun time. Like you said, it's just the community comes out to support the entire event. You go through a town, there might be a slip and slide set up somewhere and, people handing out beers or just dinner in a town. Like, it looks like so much fun, and it has my interest peaked. Like, I really wanna do that at some point.
I think you should do it. You should totally do it. It's super fun. It's worth the effort to get out there to Iowa. And those cornfields are actually a lot more beautiful than you would think. I
Yeah.
go to these places and do these epic runs through the Colorado mountains or whatever, and the scene, the landscapes are majestic. But there's some beauty out there in the Midwest, especially like the sunrises and sunsets over those corn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in the country back in the East Coast, and we were surrounded by farms. So there's so much beauty in just a field where there's some cattle in the morning. You've got the mist coming up. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
it's
different, but it's
incredible.
a different kind of beauty.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what's the best kind of bike choice for Ragbri? Would it be like a mountain bike, a road bike, or whatever's to?
Some sort of a road bike. It's all on pavement, so
Okay.
anything that is, fast rolling and smooth, but you could do it on a mountain bike. I've done it on a mountain bike before. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You don't need to go fast.
Because you're not really racing, I
You're
assume. It's
definitely
just for
not
the fun.
racing, and you're stopping every 5 to 10 miles to eat brownies or pie or ice cream or go in a slip and slide or listen to a little hoedown at somebody's farm.
Yeah, it looks so cool. Now, have you done other events like that on a bike? Other
Not
like through
really.
another
That's the only,
state?
like, huge bike event I've ever done. A lot of times when I'm on my bike, I'm either by myself, which I love. It's my alone time. It's my
Uh-huh.
favorite time to think and dream, or I'm with just a couple other people.
Okay. And it looks like, I mean, you've done so much in the past. We could talk for hours about all these events. I mean, trekking the 3 passes in Nepal and,
Yeah.
so you actually did Ram. Oh, Ram. Wow. You did Ram, the Race Across America.
Yeah.
I just saw that. That's like
Yeah.
what is it, 3,200 miles?
Yeah, but it's not as hardcore as you'd think. I did it on a team, so
Okay.
that breaks it up, makes it a lot easier. If you're doing RAM as a solo rider, then that's, like, next level sufferfest.
Okay. So you did like kind of like a relay per se, where you would do like a couple stages and then somebody else would take over and
Yep,
okay.
exactly.
So how many miles do you think you did on the whole route?
I don't even remember. It really didn't seem like that much. I always wanted to be riding more than I was.
Okay.
So, I mean, there was 8 people on the team, so at any one time, somebody's on the road for maybe an hour or so, and then you have to cycle through all the other people before it gets to you again, so
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you too, as a somebody who's involved in the YouTube space, if there were creators out there that are maybe thinking of starting a channel, whether it's running or cycling or whatever it may be, what's one piece of advice that you would give them as a somebody looking to start a channel?
you have to be persistent. I hear from lots of people that they wanna be YouTubers and a lot of kids. I do presentations at high
Right.
schools all the time, and they all want to be famous YouTubers. Like, dreaming of being like a Hollywood movie star, I guess. And they'll email me and they want advice, and then they'll start making some videos, and then those videos don't do as well as they had hoped, and they just give up.
Yep.
You put so much work into something and it's not getting the views. You're like, why am I doing this? It's a waste of time. I'm going to find something else to do. And that's how my channel was. I did not get many views on my early videos for years. It's
Yeah.
not like I had a viral hit that launched my channel. It was very slow growth. So if you truly want to do this and make a living doing it, I mean, if you're just doing this as a hobby, who cares? Just pour your heart and soul
Right.
into it and be happy knowing that you're creating some value for the world. But if you want to make a living doing this, you really have to be persistent. And so my entire career, I've put up about one video a week, and that started in
Okay.
2016. So now I have over a thousand videos.
Wow. So if that, well, since 2016 is what you said is when you
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
So when were you able to make the switch to like full-time content creator? Like you were doing that solely as your
Yeah.
job, as your
Good
income.
question. Because at the beginning, I had to take lots of outside production jobs,
Sure.
to fill in the holes because I wasn't making any money on YouTube. It wasn't until about 2021, so 5 years
Okay.
doing YouTube, where I could just focus solely on YouTube. I finally started making enough money. I got my Patreon going, and Google AdSense was doing fine, and then working with Priority Bicycles. So those three income sources really helped, free me up so I could just
Yeah.
focus on my own content, which is great. So now I don't take any outside production jobs. It's all YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're able to do pretty much anything you want now.
Yeah, exactly. I can dream up stuff and go do it and film it in the way that I want to film it and edit it and put it out
Yeah.
there. Cool.
So do you still do all the editing yourself?
Yeah, I still do everything.
And I'm curious, are you a Premiere guy or are you a DaVinci Resolve guy?
I use Premiere. It's just what I've
Premiere.
been using for years. I started out on the old version of Final Cut.
Yep.
That's what we used back in the day when I was in journalism school, and I used that for many, many, many years. But
Okay.
now it's just Premiere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, it has been awesome chatting with you about everything. I mean, we've got all
Man,
over the
it's been
place.
a great conversation. You're very good at asking good questions. So good work.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been fun chatting, and hopefully at some point, once I get recovered from this, we'll meet up at another event somewhere, probably for Hoka or Solomon or some other
Yeah,
brand, and meet up and maybe share some miles or a bike ride together at some point.
I would love that.
Yeah. All
And I
right,
hope
Ryan.
you
Well, I
heal up.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you. I
Peace,
appreciate it,
buddy.
man. Have a good one. If you enjoyed this episode of The Adventure Jogger, please consider joining our Patreon and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok for more content like this. Without your continued support, we would not be able to produce this type of content. So thank you so much to everyone that has listened, followed along, subscribed, liked, commented, you name it, donated on Patreon. Thank you.